guys know, maybe if you follow on Twitter and stuff, I've been putting together my own practice routine. Kind of like to have a consistent, let's say, like practice schedule for StarCraft, which I think it's very important to improve in any discipline. And I, as an English teacher, always tell my students, like, you have to create your own consistent practice routines. So obviously, for the sake of leading by example, this is one of the aspects of my life in which I try to put practice in and be very consistent and very deliberate about it. So I'm going to take you through some of the basic things that I do, especially to like warm up, start off on a good note, and approach the ladder eventually. So let's go right ahead first to where it all begins. So this is something that I will normally do. This is something that I did this morning because I played the Cranky Ducklings Sea Open. I actually got through to the second round, but then, dude, I had such a back and forth series versus Protoss, which is the matchup that I'm currently working on right now. And it didn't like get off to a good start for this new season. So still working on it, still polishing it. So one of the first things I do in order to kind of get the blood flowing on the brain is this little baby, which is called Practice Aim US. Moro has created a lot of maps for practice. This is one of the ones that I use. And yeah, it's basically to improve your mouse aim. I know that there's a lot of different apps and stuff out there, or games, like mini games that you can use for this. I like to use this one in particular because obviously it uses like the basic shift and shift A command, shift A click command in order to go about it, and then obviously mouse actions, which is what we're interested in right now. So one of the things that this has done is that it has actually improved my mouse aim. So for example, in situations where you have to target fire, or where you have to like target fire stutter step, these kinds of exercises work a lot. Plus you have like real size units at sort of realistic speeds. Obviously, as you get into like higher levels, you start getting like these wacky animations, which you'll see in a minute if I get there. But basically, I do 5 minutes of this. So we're gonna start here. Let's go to a game. And basically, it's just clicking on all these things, making sure you blow up all the units. So this is what I start off with. The reason why is that it's so great for focus, because you actually have to pay attention to what you're clicking, because of the speed of the targets. Obviously that focus has to increase as you go along, and you have to keep tabs of what is happening in a, let's say, not too big but considerable portion of your screen. Then there's also repetitive mouse movement, which is sometimes nice if, for example, your hand is feeling a little stiff on the mouse side. This is something good to use to just like practice some rapid fire clicking. I usually lose in this level because getting the first baneling is so important to get like the whole streak. The other ones I'm doing okay with, and after that the levels get a little bit wacky. So I hope I can get past the baneling one in this run. Lately I've been doing it more often, but I hope we can get it in this run so that you actually see what comes after. Because honestly, there are some of the levels afterwards that I find easier to go about than the banelings one. So here we are, just clicking on stuff, clicking on moving targets in different patterns. And what you can do is sometimes play around with the patterns. Like you don't have to necessarily follow like the sequence of units. Sometimes you can like go off on these weird patterns. But this one I never do it because it's harder for me. So it's like I have to follow the path, you know? Okay, got that one. Excellent. I think we might be able to make it. Just give me 1 sec. I don't want to like cry victory out of that soon. Okay, there we go. And now we have these Hellions, which move faster, but I find them easier to hit because they don't require like this rapid fire clicking, which sometimes, if my wrist is too stiff, I'll have a hard time with it. And now we have the shrinking stalkers, which get to a very ridiculous size, but obviously force you to go about like weird patterns, which is kind of nice for like the purpose of the level. And obviously it makes you look for like the easiest stalker timing to hit, for when they're like really tiny and then they start growing back again. That's when you want to hit them. So you're kind of like paying attention to a lot of what's going on. So for me, at least, to engage my focus, this is actually pretty good. This is something that I like to do. Okay, I'll probably listen to Sentry's one. Okay, so that was 5 minutes. I won't go over 5 minutes. I don't think it's worth it. Like, it's worth the time. Because then there are other like maps and things that you can actually use for specific micro situations, which we'll go into in a bit. So the next one that I use is, I use 2 different ones for micro. I use Darklink's Micro Trainer, and I'll go about maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 drills tops for like 10 to 15 minutes in total. So let's get into that one and see what that looks like. And then we'll go to Marine Control, which is very specific, very hard. I have a hard time actually like getting through. I think the farthest I've ever gone there, it's to level 7 and there's like 30 of them. So I don't know about that, but yeah, it's great practice, especially with when dealing with banelings and lings, speedlings and speed banelings. So yeah, it's a pretty cool map. But we're first gonna go into Darkling's Micro Trainer, because this one, honestly, what I like to do with it is for the most part get through the motions of what it means, in terms of typing on a keyboard, like order of actions, like little subroutines of actions that you do in your micro. But I do understand that obviously, because macro is so important in the game, like having good mechanics, I won't devote a lot of time to this in particular. I will probably devote 15 minutes in total, very specific things, and what I want to go is just through the sequence of actions that I have to do with my hands in order to achieve something. But obviously, if there's a situation where I don't need to micro, because it would take away my attention from other things that are more important in the game, then there's no use like practicing for an hour. Like stutter stepping for an hour makes no fucking sense. It's just to like going through the motions of microing in general, as opposed to like try to get to the last level where you're like over microing every single thing that happens. So this one, for example, is focus fire stutter step. I mean, this is one stutter step, like simple stutter step. And what I actually learned from this is to find a decent rhythm for stutter stepping, and obviously this has no stem, because in stem it's very different. And then when there's banelings involved and banelings have speed, that's an entirely different thing. But basically, this is what it is. So we're gonna stutter step. We're gonna try to get rid of as many zerglings as possible. Probably in a real game, I would have already found a choke point where to set up my Marines so that I don't have to micro this. But just going through the rhythm and the motions helps. Kind of like to set your brain up for things that you can encounter on ladder, basically. So this is the second part of like my practice routine. And I'll just look at the clock at times and say, okay, so it's been already 3 minutes of this. I'll probably complete 5 minutes of this, and then go to the next drill. Exactly, set it up for the test. Exactly, Poison, you're absolutely right. Welcome, my dear friend. My dear Protoss mentor. Okay. Okay, so yeah, just 5 minutes of that, you know? Like going around the map, finding a nice pattern how to position yourself in relation to the group of, to how like the Zerglings group up. Especially if the person is not like devoted to absolutely microing them, like micro their heart out of the heart of their Zerglings. This is like a nice rhythm, nice pattern to do so. So for example, in a real game, you'd probably found like, oh, there's a little obstacle there that can help me. So probably would have backed up, done that to the, then that to the links where you like kind of like split the group, you know? Maybe you would have found a mineral line behind which to hide. But in this case, it's just an open field, so it's unrealistic in the sense that it doesn't provide like obstacles or safeguards or choke points. But it is nice in terms of developing a rhythm for stutter stepping. And it's kind of like with music in the way that you start playing things slow, and then you work up your way to higher speeds. Like for example, when you have sim, and when there's speedlings. But like going through the motions helps. Next one that I do is focus fire stutter step, because this has this is a challenge in and of itself, because it means that you have to both stutter step and then target fire, and then just finish out the rest of the links. This is Dartling's micro trainer. I'll show it again once we're finished with this. And I'll do this for 5 minutes and just get as far as I can get. Doesn't matter if I don't get too far, the idea is just practicing the motions. That's all there is to it. Again, hitting all the banelings, and then just stutter stepping back to kill the Zerglings. So that's about it. And what's cool about Dartling's micro trainer is that you have all 3 races, and you have drills for all 3 races. Like there's actually a drill for Terran against the Protoss Deathball, and it has like certain composition limitations. Like I said, I haven't gone far with that one in particular. I like practicing maybe in the unit tester as opposed to here, like big engagements. But in this case, it has some engagement situations which offer like helpful principles as opposed to like realistic situations. As opposed to the one that we're actually going to see in Marine Control, which that one I think is way more situational and way more real. And then you kill that. That's that. But like Marine Control, compared to this one, is so much harder. And you're gonna see it in a bit. And there we go, we continue moving forward. At some point I'm gonna stall, because as the amount of Marines, as the amount of banelings increases, it gets a little harder. Especially because both the amount of banelings and the amount of Zerglings increases, so they start moving in these weird patterns, which are a little bit harder to keep up with. But the idea is that, maybe if someone is like 2 baseling baneling you, you'll probably have a situation like this where like not all the units have speed. They'll probably be off creep because the creep will not be that spread. So you'll probably have a situation like this. And obviously there's a point where you just have to determine like, this is too much micro, I've already lost something, like maybe an SCV cycle or something of that sort. So obviously like microing against, 20 banelings and stutter stepping your way into oblivion is not that practical, so that's why I limit each of these to 5 minutes. Because I probably won't spend that much time microing anyway, and the maps will actually offer me obstacles and choke points that I can use, which will make this like 10 times easier in a way. At least in a situation where you have slow lings and slow bangs. Okay, so we've done 10 minutes of that. And then sometimes I'll go and do the split. Because what the split has done in particular is help me find like patterns of splitting that work. So I'll just like play around with my units and see like, okay, so how can I like partition these groups of units, you know? And then like the principle of leaving like a wall of marines first to like soak up some damage. And then like using stop at times, like actually stutter stepping within the situation with small groups of marines. For example, selecting these and then partitioning these and then putting stop there, stutter stepping a little. So this is actually very experimental and it's probably not that real. But I've learned so much about like splitting marines just by doing like different splitting patterns. And I've actually become better at it. Which is basically what we want. So there we kind of like stuttered. Was a little bit clunky there. So here we'll just like go around, try to spread these guys. And not trying to be perfect, but like trying different things. For example, there, I grabbed a huge chunk. So I have also noticed that I have to learn to box smaller when it comes to microing versus banelings. Because then you'll have like a huge chunk of bio, which is actually something that you don't want. Because it'll get obliterated. Like there, for example, I boxed too big. And then I have all these exposed marines. So those are things that I can work on, like boxing smaller. There you go. We boxed a little bit smaller this time. We already have like decent amount of groups. I could have done better there, but now I can like just, you know, go around and split shit. Split shit around and about. There, I needed more distance. But still, I managed to do it if I follow the principle. So we're almost at 15 minutes of this, which means that we're almost done. Oh, and you have like a limited space, so that you don't like try to pull back forever, you know? Because sometimes there's like obstacles and things. And this is probably gonna be the last one. So there, trying to box big and then small. Trying to not go too far, control the clicks really nicely. There we go. Look at that. Nice. And now we can just like, you know, go about that. So then after the first 5 minutes of practice aim, I will do 15 minutes of this. I sometimes switch it with marine control. So instead of doing those drills, I'll go to marine control, which is this one. I want you to look at it, because it's insane. I mean, obviously for someone who probably is more proficient in micro, might seem easy. Like someone that has better mechanics than I do. Let's say Master Syllabus player or GM player. They'll probably be able to go about these things easier, but the first time that I faced this and I spent 15 minutes stuck in level 1, I knew that that was probably something that I needed to work on. So this is another one that I will trade, like that we use for micro training, but this one is specifically to deal with speedlings and banelings on creep. So those are like the victory conditions here, and basically you have to destroy all the enemy forces within a limited time. So you actually get only a few seconds to deal with each scenario, which I think it is more realistic, because sometimes in a game you'll actually stop microing at some point and just go about your business in your base. And they just like throw you in there. So then you have this situation where you actually have to attack and you have to like split. And the banelings move real fast. Okay, because honestly we are on creep. There I think we did by very little. And then I'll like start splitting. But then you can't split too far, because then you'll stop shooting. So a lot of units will survive, let's say like the first wall of bio. that the units encounter. And now I just split. Oh, this was, oh, that's one of the best splits I've ever done in this. Then you find like these little chokes, these little corners. And you kind of like don't want to stop shooting, that's the thing. There we go. This is one of the best runs I've ever had. Okay, so here we have to go all the way here. And you start like recognizing specific patterns in terrain of locations that can help you deal with a huge amount of Zerglings and Banes as they come in. So here I remember, this one is hard for me, because you have to create sort of a little bit of a concave there. You have to stutter step, and then you have to go about here and try to like spread about there. That was way better, but still not good enough. This one, I'll probably do 5 minutes of, because it's so intensive. And if you see, the scenarios take a few seconds. So even if I was able to make it out of a decent amount of scenarios, I would practice. I would probably be able to squeeze in a lot of them. But because I'm not proficient yet with this map, it still takes me a while to move on. So I'll probably be stuck here for a while. There, try to spread. Oof. Oh no, block smaller. Damn it. And you have to go about it again. Oh fuck. I misclicked there. Try to split there. Nice attempt. It's still not good enough yet. So just stutter stepping, try to open the concave. Box a little bit too big that first time. Hey Judo, how you doing? Again, try to open up. Split up, that was a little bit better. Oh, there we go. Nicely done. And we'll go to this one. Oh, I don't remember what this one was, but... Oh, I think I do now. Yeah, it was probably around here. Or at least that's like what I did. Because then it's like, oh, these are choke points! And these look like, I don't know, mineral line choke points. So we open there, but you see we have a limited amount of time. Oh, barely. 1 second left. Okay, this is the last one that we're gonna do. And now they're coming from all three sides, and there's a lot of them. So once again, we try to open the concave. Not perfect, not great. But we have to like react really quickly to what is coming. Try to spread out. Yeah, too slow. A little bit too slow there. Okay, so we've done 5 minutes of that. So that is, let's say, step 2.1 of my practice. So first, practice aim, and then specifically microing scenarios from between 5 to 15 minutes, depending on which map I choose to practice on. Now, this is the interesting one. This one I really, really like. So we're gonna go to arcade, and we have Darling's Multitasking Trainer. There's a couple of them. There's which one was the other one? I don't remember, but there's a map where you have like a base and different things happen at certain points. But then you also have like this probe to the right side that you have to constantly move. I don't like that one that much, but I'm going to show you why I like this one in particular. Actually, I think in a real game, most people seeing the amount of Zerg just load up and get the fuck out. Exactly. Yeah, that's the deal. So sometimes you will load up and get the fuck out, and sometimes you'll be like, hey, I can deal with that. And just go about and deal with that, you know? Especially if you learn to recognize specific like terrain features that you're like, ooh, if I get behind this mineral line, or if I get in this little choke point, I'll be able to come ahead and destroy a lot of army. So obviously those are kind of like pattern recognition things where you can assess a situation in a split second. So yeah, in a real games, a lot of the times you won't necessarily do it, but then there's those key moments where you're like, huh, if I actually pull this off, I'll come like really, really ahead. And maybe I can take down that third that just went down, you know? It happens to me a lot with Zerg. Especially with people that play bio. Those are like the kinds of skills that you want to develop. So let's go in with this one, Tarlink's multitasking trainer. Yeah, exactly. It would be wise.
Good luck and have fun.
Okay, so this is how this one works. This is specifically for Terran. You assign yourself some time to practice this particular map. So you can give it like, I don't know, 300, 500, 1,000 seconds. I always use 300. I don't do more than that. And then you have these different events that will come about the map. So the first time that I actually went into this, I probably checked off both invisible units and High Templar. And then went about to doing army movement, production, depots, so Naga tower control, drop spotting, drops, and main fight. Drops is basically you doing drops in like these little islands that you see over here in the minimap. But then I was like, you know what? I feel extremely overwhelmed. Did you follow? Yeah, Stay at Home Story Cup? Yeah, I did follow it. This was after I started watching after the Sea Duckling opened. Okay, so you have all these things. So I had checked off all these. I checked all these things because I was like, yeah, these are the things that I want to practice. And then I actually noticed that I fucking sucked at the first three, which are army movement, production, and depots. So I was like, okay, let's scale this back a little bit and go back to the first three. And I only moved to Solnaga tower control and into drop spotting when I actually had above 80% in all of these. So one of the things that you need to know about this particular map is that it's not necessarily accurate. For example, if you max out, let's say that every few seconds, or I don't know exactly, I haven't counted like the cycle, but you kind of like start to feel it. You kind of start developing a gaming sense for it. But every specific amount of time, it'll check what's going on on the map. So for example, if you have army movement, it'll check that your army is moving and going to these specific locations that the map tells you to. It'll make sure that all your production facilities are producing, and it'll make sure that there's enough supply available to keep on producing. But if you have too much supply available, then it'll start like counting negative points, I'd say, or giving you a lesser percentage of success. But if you max out, it'll continue to do that. So obviously you cannot produce if you're already maxed out. So if you're trying these three things and you don't have situations where you could lose units, like for example the main fight one, or the High Templar one, or the invisible units one, then it'll start marking you negatively, even though you maxed out and you actually made units, you know. So that's something to keep in mind. If you don't have situations where you lose units, it'll start counting negatively once you maxed out. So that's something you should know, because you'll never get 100% with this, because there's no fucking way. But anyway, so basically,
press the ready button when you wish to begin.
We press the ready button, and what I do is I go about setting up specific things before we hit the ready button. So I'll hotkey my production buildings, I'll hotkey my command center, and e-base and armory. Obviously I'll hotkey the location, then I'll go about hotkey this location, which is the one where we're going to build depots on. And then I'm going to go about hotkeying my army. So this has helped me in many ways, in the sense that now I'm starting to set up and to hotkey as units come out. Obviously sometimes I forget, but I'm doing it more and more, and at least in my TBT, it's helped me in the last few games that I've played since new ladder season started. because now I'm starting to develop this habit of setting up hotkeys for stuff and actually try to use spellcasters from a hotkey and not just like box everything and hotkey it in the same thing and then just try to like click underneath medevacs and shit while a battle is ensuing, which is extremely stressful and it shouldn't be like that, you know? So once we have that set up, so this is what I do. I'll go get the upgrades, get stuff going, go location, start here, and then start moving my army, and then just start like going back between things. I go over here, I'll go over there, I'll check my mini-map.
Additional supply depots are
There I got supply blocked, but I know that this is almost done. So that's something that happens. So you see, even if it takes you like a split second in which the structure is not producing, it'll mark you negatively. Like it'll actually do it. So I check my base. I move around. So I know this is about to like finish. And then I'll go and build 4 more depots. I'll check over here. And yeah, that's basically how you start doing it. I'll go back to my base.
more shoebox depots.
Okay, I need depots, so I check. I move, go back, look at my supply. I'm overproducing here. I'll go back here and I'll make 4 more depots. I queued 1 extra one. So that's a little imprecision on my part.
Upgrade.
Okay, continue moving my army. My depots are almost done. I didn't check my command center, so keeping that in mind. Tank is almost done. Getting a worker. Going back to army, checking again. And now I have 200 supply available at a decent time. Obviously, if I had other events happening, I would have probably lost units already. I would have probably had a main fight already. And the race against which you have the main fight is random. So you don't know, for example, if there's going to be Ling Bane, you don't know if there's going to be like Roach Infester, whatever other shit, Hydra. You don't know if it's going to be Protoss Death Ball, that kind of stuff. So you have to immediately, obviously, look at the minimap and engage as you see fit with the units that you have. But just the fact of doing this was really challenging for me. Okay, so now we're maxed. It starts counting negatively, so it doesn't matter at that point. Like I just keep like looking at my stuff, and I know that it's about to end. And probably, for example, if I know that by, let's say, 2 minutes before, half a minute before I finish, I'll max out. I can just reduce the time of the drill, and just have less amount of seconds, so that it doesn't do that. So that's something that's easily fixed. So production is the one that for me right now is the suckiest. But it's because of that. Like if you go to your starport and you didn't hit the hotkey at the right time, and that's the moment where the cycle of the map checks what you're doing, you're gonna miss a percentage that's gonna say like terrible in one of the buildings. Okay, so let's go back out. Do I need some water? Polaris made some really nice coffee, but I definitely need some hydration. Okay. So after that, if we look at the timer, we've exactly practiced for around 40 to 45 minutes. of basic like mechanical shit. Sometimes I will, for example, say I don't want to do micro today, so I'll do out 30 to 45 minutes just to that like multitasking trainer, and we'll do it several times. What is it like? If it's 300 seconds, then it's 5 minutes. So I'll do it in cycles of 5 minutes, and I'll do it for, let's say, 6 to 9 times. So we get the 30 to 45 minutes. And yeah, that's basically it for my practice. Now the next part obviously is sometimes I'll have a new build, or just a build that I want to flesh out, that I know that I probably mess up some timings, or I don't get the stuff when I need to get it. So I'll do, apart from that, a 1 hour build practice, and I only practice, let's say, the first 5 minutes if it's a new build. And if it's an old build, well, if it's a new build, I will practice the first like 8 to 10 minutes. And if it's an old build that I want to flesh out, I'll practice the first 5 minutes, and then start, like, let's say I practice sometimes new builds like on bite-sized situations in which, like, oh, I'm going to practice till this supply. I don't like measuring things in terms of time. I like to measure them in terms of supply, because obviously your economy is what's going to sustain whatever build you're doing. So obviously base saturation or supply is, I think, a much more accurate measure for a build. So let's say I'm going to get up to 52 supply, which is, I don't know, minute 5 or minute 4 or minute 6. So I'll just practice those first minutes. I'll start with 3 minutes and then 5 minutes, and then go all the way to like the 9-minute mark. That's with new builds. And builds that I want to flesh out, I'll just go through the whole thing and then check the replay, check what I did wrong, and go back again. But we're not going to do that today, because that'll take a decent amount of time, and I already did it today. But yeah, it's basically just getting into a custom game with an AI, or even alone, and just practice your build. Just do your build. Time and time again. So now I'm going to jump into an unranked game to warm up, and then we'll go from there. Thanks to all of you guys who are watching, by the way. I hope this was useful. I hope this intro was useful. I'll definitely be uploading it on YouTube for you guys to watch and stuff, and have information on what I do, so you can follow along the process with me. And obviously, if you have like feedback and stuff, or recommendations of other things that I could do, yeah, those are welcome.